Ah, les filles tombent. Oh là là, papa. Oh, putain, oh merde. Papa, binalar, oh là là.
A sudden and intense hailstorm swept across Sicily on a Tuesday afternoon, leaving streets submerged, vehicles damaged, and residents scrambling for the shelter. Meteorologists reported that the storm was followed the warm Mediterranean air cauldron with a cold front from the north. Causing heavy rainfall, hailstorms up to Gulf both sides, and strong winds had battered to the island. Palermo, Catania, and Messina were among the hardest hit cities. Streets quickly flooded and traffic came to standstill, and a heat shattered car windows and dented rooftops. "I've never seen hail like this in my life," said Giuliano Marino, in a local shop owner in Palermo. "The noise was different, and water was rising within minutes." The protest zone, Sicily Civil Protection Authority received hundreds of emergency calls for stranded motorists, fallen trees, and damaged properties. Several small rivers in province overflowed, forced temporary evacuation in low-lying neighborhoods. Minor injuries were trapped from slip and hail impact. Agriculture area also suffered significant losses. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm was part of the weather system moving across central city, Italy, where warm Mediterranean air collided vitally with a cold front from the northern Europe. It was an explosive mix, said meteorologist Giulia Bianchi. The sudden temperature drop triggered intense convection, prompting hail and unusual sights of this time of year. Shops and restaurants in Trieste and accompanied forest suffered flood with outdoor treacherous terraces and markets still destroyed. Several hospitals reported minor injuries, mostly from the people slipping or brain stuck in fallen debris. It lasted barely 20 minutes, said cafe owner Aliza Romano, but the damages caused local like hurricane airspace. The storm aftermath left Rome's historic landmarks cratered in ice and a rail haunting sights. Tourists shaped photos to Colosseum and Spanish steps, gilding the under street slides, and the city crews walked through the night to clear debris and restore normal traffic. Experts warned that extreme weather like this could become more frequent. Mediterranean storms are intensified due to climate change, said climatologist Dr. Lorenzo Conti. Rome may see more violent hail and flash flood in the recent heat. As a calm returned by morning, Romanos awoke the melted hail and the city shaking the yet another reminder to nature growing unpredictability. Rome was hit by unexpected and several hailstorms that covered historic capital with a layer of ice, creating several scenes to resemble weather rather than early autumn. The sudden storm swept through the city on Tuesday afternoon, disrupted traffic, flooding subway station, and forcing prediction to seek shelter. Lucca authority reported that hailstorms, some the size of a golf ball, fell in nearly 20 minutes, covering squares, roads, and even areas around the Colosseum. Emergency crew were disrupted to clear brook drains after torrential rain mixing with the ice caused flash flooding in several low-lying areas. Public transport was severely affected, with the several metro lines temporarily suspended due to water ingress. Drivers described terrified moments where the visibility dropped to almost zero. It was like a sky was falling, and the hail bending to so loudly, and the roof in the car was where could hit each other, said the city resident Marco Rossi. Businesses in the city center rushed to protect their shop windows, while cafes and restaurants along the Via del Corso lost their outdoor sitting areas, which were destroyed with the hail. Social media quickly filled with the images of Rome cobbled trees turned into rivers and ice caused astonishment around the world. Meteorologists explained that the storm was caused of the sudden collision to warm Mediterranean air with a cold front and swept through the central Italy, an increasingly common pattern associated with the climate instability. Experts warned that such intense hailstorms are becoming more frequent in southern Europe. Despite the chaos, no serious injuries were reported, although dozens of people were treated in hospital to minor cuts and businesses. The mayor of Rome urged residents to remain cautious, emphasizing the city's vulnerability to extreme weather events. For many Romans, the storm was stark reminder for the power of nature and the need to better preparedness in the era-changing climate realities. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern regions of the country. Torrential downpours have caused rivers to swell, boost their banks, and inundate towns and villages. This latest episode of flooding has left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy, and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away, and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po of the Angle, have reached critical levels, forced emergency services to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads, and isolated communities. In Venice, the city is too familiar to high water levels. Flood definitions will put the test. The iconic Most Barriers, designed to protect the city with the rising tides, were activated shelters to mitigate the Venice from the significant damage. However, other areas in the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to fare the higher ground.
Eccoci qua, è arrivata la prima pioggia. Devo spendere pure luce alla piazzetta.
Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed her condolences and promised immediate government support. "We will not leave Sicily alone with this tragedy." The flood also caused significant economic damage. Vineyards, citrus groves, and olive farms are blackboard on Sicily economy, where flooded and agriculture groups warn of millions in losers. Businesses in the historic center of Palermo may be closed for the weeks and a half a month. The Italian Meteorological Service has linked in disaster to the Medican and Mediterranean cyclones similar to the Triton storm, since one the climate change is exacerbating such phenomena as a warning sea contributing to heavier rains and a violent storm. Residents clearing debris are in shock. Standing outside the damaged barrier, Rosa County said, "Sicily is used to the hardship, but this something else. We cannot fight this our own." The Italian capital, more accustomed by scrolling heat wave, stumbled after exploding hailstorm hit Rome, covering the streets with ice, destroying cars and causing chaos throughout the entire city. What began the heavy rain suddenly intensified it into the torrent and hailstorm, larger than the golf ball, battering the city at nearly half an hour. When it means major landmarks such as the Colosseum and Spanish Steps and Villa de Corso was surrounded by the river of ice while traffic came to complete standstill. It was a winter had arrived violent incident, said Lucca Romana, who abandoned her car near the Pizza Venezia. The hailstorm broken glass it through the roof when going to collapse. Emergency hotline were overwhelmed and firefighters rushed to more than 500 incidents across the capital. Florence streets crushed vehicles, safe ground windows shattered and several subway stations were flooded. At least 40 people were treated to injuries mainly caused by broken glass and slippery falls. Hospitals in terrestrial and Termini reported overcrowded emergency rooms.
Meu Deus, o que é isso? Terminou com a minha casa. Terminou. Eu nunca vi na minha vida isso aqui, Jesus. Terminou com tudo.
Rome was struck by unexpected violent hailstorm, transforming ancient streets into rivers of ice. Within minutes, the Italian capital, known for its warm autumn nights, was pelted by hailstorms the size of walnuts created on unusual winter scenes of mid-October. According to meteorologists, the phenomenon resulted from the violent collisions between most Mediterranean air and a sudden cold front from northern Europe. These collisions swept the massive cumulonimbus clouds, bringing torrential rain and intense hail accompanied by gusts reaching 19 km per hour. It felt like being inside an ice-filled washed machine, said the residents near Pisa, Venezia. Emergency services were overwhelmed by hundreds of calls. Firefighters rescued drivers trapped in the flooded cars and subway station closed due to flooding. Major throughout the lack of cars and streets along the Tiber River become impossible. Rome is not structurally equipped to handle with the kids of weather, noted Lucca Bianchi of the City of Civil Protection Department. Our system simply cannot cope with the sudden extreme rainfall. Hospital treachery doesn't endure after slippery on frozen sidewalks. Italy. A sudden massive hailstorm has caused extensive damage across Italy, paralyzing major cities and devastated most agriculture areas. This extreme weather struck late Monday night, battered region from Lombardy to Tuscany, with the hailstones the size of a golf ball and a wind exceeded 100 km per hour. It left a trail of destruction, flooding, and chaos. Residents in Milan, Bologna, and Parma reported scenes of panic in the dark storm cloud relating in an eerily sunlight within minutes. It was followed a deferring onslaught, hail smashed roofs, shattered car windows, and tearing streets and frozen rivers. It sounded like an explosion, said Florence Bianchi, a shop owner in the Milan. The hailstorm hit so hard they bent to mental separate inward. Fire department across northern Italy received over 2,000 emergency calls, reported to trapped drivers and clearing roads buried under the layer of ice. Power lines shattered trees and uprooted an entire region, plunging into darkness overnight. Train services were halted in multiple areas, while the Milan-Malnesa Airport and Bologna-Guglielmo Marconi Airport experienced a delay in cancellation due to heavy hail estimated on runways. powerful hailstorm swept across Rome on a Monday evening, transforming in the eternal city into surreal winter scene in the middle of autumn. The violent burst of the weather struck without warning, pelting the capital with the ice stones the size of a marble 8 in some era's golf ball. Within the minutes, streets, piazzas, and park cars were buried under the thick layer of ice, forcing traffic and standstill and overwhelming the city drainage systems. It was like a blizzard, said local resident Marco DeSantis, who was driving near Pisa, Veneto, where the storm hit. The visibility dropped to zero. People were hooking to pulling over, afraid the wind shift would shatter. Emergency service received hundreds of calls across Rome and nearby towns. Firefighters rushed to clear blocked roads, flooded underpasses, and fallen trees branches. Public transport was temporarily suspended in several districts, where video shared online showed buses tragically through the rivers and a hail of water flowing through the metro entries. Authority urged residents to avoid unnecessary travel. This was one of the strongest storms in Rome has experienced in recent years, said Maria Roberta Giglietti, who covered in the emergency task force overnight, where coordinated cleanup operation and assessment structured damage throughout the city. Meteorologists at the Italian airport's meteorological center attributed the storm to a sudden collisions of the most Mediterranean air and the cold front from the northern Europe, which formed powerful thundercloud over central Italy. The conditions were ideal for the formation of supercell, explained senior meteorologist Dr. Elisa Monti. Such storm can develop with a few hours and cause heavy rain in a very short period of time. Several days, including Austria and EU, received more than 18 millimeters of rain in an hour, a much worse than a rainfall in the Sydney evening. The deluge caused a temporary power outage in some parts of the city and disrupted train service to the leisure region. A dramatic video appeared on the social media showing lightning strikes at the Colosseum, water following down the Venus steps in the residents formation human chain to help each other across the flooding.
Guardate ragazzi! Guardate un po'! Guardate un po' ragazzi! Sono un amico!
On Wednesday afternoon, a sudden and violent hailstorm hit Rome, forced residents and tourists to seek shelters, and a peace pelted the city. The streets were quickly covered with a thick layer of hail, tuning iconic locations such as Pisa, Navona, Valle di Corso, and Trastevere into frozen pools. Witnesses described the storm as absolutely terrifying. Giovanni Rossi, a local taxi driver, said, "I lived in Rome all my life, but I have never seen anything like this. Cars were damaged and a hailstorm bouncing on the roof like bullets." Emergency service reported more than 400 calls, including people trapped in the cars, flooded names, and the fallen trees blocked major road. While the Foucault warmed round the clock to clear the streets and help residents, several metro stations, including Repubblica and Barbani, were temporarily closed due to water entering the tunnel, leaving passengers stranded. Authorities confirmed minor injuries from the hail strikes and slippery sidewalk. Meteorologists explained that the storm was a result of rapid interaction between the most Mediterranean air and a cold northern front, creating extremely unstable conditions. The classic connective supercell storm, short-lived but extremely intense. Venice, the city of water, was forced yet another violent test of survival. The powerful storm system swept across northern Italy this week, striking Venice with a torrential wind, hurricane-force winds and dramatic flooding that would reinforce over the city's long-term future. Overnight, thunder echoed across the lagoon with wind gusts topping 110 km an hour, battering the ancient city. The down water level had stretched to 115 centimeters, high enough to submerge much of St. Mark Square and spill into historic buildings. It was a chaos, said residents Marco de Alisa. The wind was howling and the water was everywhere. We couldn't ever open our door. Our authority activated the most fluid barrier system, the multi-billion-euro defense designed to protect Venice from high tides. But even this was engineering marvel struggling to contain the ferocity of the storm. Engineers confirmed that several guests shattered with minor malfunction, allowing water to seep into vulnerable zone. Local businesses are counting heavy losers. Coffee, art, galleries, and luxury hotels along the Grand Canal were flooded with the hour. Ferry service on Naples and Cagliari were suspended due to Rossi. The Sicily team network was shut down after electrical damage and overheat lines. Meteorologists said the storm was followed by the powerful Mediterranean low-pressure system, parts of the growing pattern of Mediterranean, like a storm that resembled tropical cyclones. Temperatures dropped sharply following the storm and held the size of walnuts damaged vehicles and citrus orange in the surrounding countryside. Regional Governor Renato Scini called the event wake all of the Sicily, emphasizing the urgent need to improve drainage and flood difference. We can no longer train trees to rare incidents. We said they are becoming by new normal. Video circulated online showing people wading through the waist-deep water in Palermo Historic Center, while rescue used inflatable boats to reach stranded residents near the Pisa. Electricity outage and thousands without electricity overnight. The schools were ordered closed and crew cleared debris and restored infrastructure. Climate experts warn that Sicily is one of the dense urban layout and against infrastructure is increasingly exposed to extreme weather linked to global warming. After the storm, Sicily emergency service remained overwhelmed. Over 315 emergency calls were recorded in 24 hours, and fire crews were sent to Serret, Ragusa, and Agrigento to clear fallen trees, restore power lines, and evacuate flooded buildings. Farmers in rural area report catastrophic losses. Vineyard, olive grapes, and retail and citrus orange, where other vital civil economy were flooded. This storm destroyed a 12-year work. St. Antonio Rizal, the farmer near Trapani, were in despair. The island's fragile infrastructure suffered serious damage in the southern parts of the island. Bridge in rural roads collapsing, cutting off Smile Mountains town. In Enna, several landslides blocked all access roads, forcing helicopters to deliver supplies. Rescue teams, including the military, have been deployed to assist with the worst-hit areas. Civil defenders until have set up temporary shelters in schools and community centers of displaced families, many of whom have lost everything. Environmental experts warn that such intense storms are becoming more frequent due to climate change. In Venice, a city all too familiar, and a high water level, flood definitions were put on the test. The iconic most barriers designed to protect the crisis from the rising test were activities sheltered the Venice from significant damage. However, other areas of the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in the Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to higher ground. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in several regions, mobilizing rescue workers to deploy to Arno to assist in evacuation force. Civil protection authorities have urged people to affected areas to remain cautious to official warning as more rain forecast in the coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited in the affected areas, expressing her solidarity with the victims and pledging government support to reconfiguration force. This is national emergency, and we are working closely to local authority to ensure the safety for all residents, she said. Climate experts that such extreme weather events could become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with a varied geography, particularly vulnerable to affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, poor mountain infrastructure, and urban expansion into flood-prone areas has exacerbated the impact of recent storms.
Sono le macchine sotto acqua, ragazzi. Questa è via Sant'Alessio.
Guarda che roba questo!
Guardate questo signore.
This is not the first time Sicily was faced with the wrath of nature, but experts are calling this storm one of the most destructive weather events in decades. The last such disaster occurred in 2029, where deadly floods and landslides killed 37 people in Messina, but this time the combination of heavy rainfall, wind and widespread infrastructure damage made the consequences even more serious. According to preliminary government report, more than 1,200 homes were damaged, 14 roads remain closed, and 7 bridges have structure damage. Insurance companies are already inundated with the calls of many families without insurance to continue on compensation from the state. This storm was particularly dangerous because it suddens. Meteorologists issue a yellow alert just hours before the first downpour. By that time, it was too late many communities to prepare. Critics are now to call into fast weather warning system to better preparedness of natural disaster, especially in the southern region, which is often overlooking. Satellite images show in a grim picture. Meteorologists from Italy's Severe Protection Agency described the storm as one of the strongest in recent years. The combination of warm, moist air from the Mediterranean and a cold front from the north caused extensive instability, explained meteorologist Marco De Santis. Such supercell systems are becoming more frequent due to climate change. Authority urged residents to stay indoors and avoid flood streets, warning to even more severe weather expected in the Canton weekend. Cleanup efforts are underway, with the city worker clearing debris in the hill from clogged storm drains. Major Roberto Gilardi called the situation as a wake-up call for climate change preparedness. Rome is not used to such violent weather, he said. We must adapt to infrastructure and protect cities to preserve and heritage. A powerful storm tore through Rome, Italy late Tuesday evening, drenched the capital in torrential rain and battered with a violent wind and hail. The tempest, which lasted less than an hour, caused severe flooding, damaged historic landmarks, and left thousands without power. In just 14 minutes, parts of the city recorded over 17 millimeters of rainfall, overlapped drainage system, and transformed ancient streets into rivers. Cars were left stranded near the Coliseum and Pisa, Venezia, while torrents of water surged through the Trastevere and Party district. It fell little apocalyptic, said Marco De Angelis, the shop owner in the city center. I saw lanterns strike in the Tiber River and the sky turned and the electric white. The noise was differing. Authority reported hundreds of emergency calls across the metropolitan area. Firefighters walked through the night, rescuing motorists, cleaning up fallen trees and pumping water from the underground gerages. Public transport was heavily disrupted. Several metro lines suspended severe after tunnels flooded. Meteorologists blamed the event and the sudden Mediterranean cyclone intensified by unusually warm sea temperatures. This is not a typical storm, explained the Dr. Luisa Ferrara, a climatologist on Rome tour over Tala University, where witnessed more the aggressive atmospheric system linking in the warm climate. What was happening once decade now happening yearly. Videos showed online showed hail of the size of a coin pelting the Spanish steps and lightning bolts illuminated the dome of St. Peter Balska. Emergency scenes echoed across the city. The storm cell moved through, leaving a trail of debris in its wake. The storm also disrupted air and sea traffic. Flights and a Falcon-Belsky airport were delayed and diverted due to strong crosswind, and a ferry service connecting Sicily to Naples and Cagliari were temporarily suspended. Meteorologists from the Italy Air Force were the service explained that the storm was triggered by a low-pressure system moving in North Africa, coating with warm air, humid air from the Mediterranean, apart from the intensified due to rising sea temperatures. Local officials warning that more severe weather will follow. The storms are becoming stronger and more frequent, said Major Roberto Lagala. We must adapt our infrastructure and changing climate. By early morning, the storm has moved eastward, leaving behind the mud-stretched streets, debris at the damaged vehicles. Volunteers joined fighters in clear efforts with the local characters provided to aid families to lost belongings. This event noted Sacramento, how South Italy, in a front line of Europe's shifting climate where sudden storms, flash flood, and recovered heat waves are now part of daily life.